Is it me? Is it just Daniel Cormier versus USADA and Jon Jones? It's not, right? It's Daniel Cormier versus USADA and Jon Jones. So we all know the situation with Jon Jones. He's basically eligible to fight after the end of October. He gets 3 months of his suspension chopped off because he's going to be an informant and a snitch, according to many people. And lots of speculation as to what information he's given USADA. And to many on the outside looking in, Jon basically got a on the wrist. That was it for his actions. And Cormier then comes out and says, well, to hell with this, right? I have been a model athlete and a model employee. I get tested all these times. And the guy that I've lost to has been completely unreliable and cannot manage his affairs. He's the one you test every single day. Instead, you reduce his suspension and you basically let him get away with murder. Well, not murder, that's a stretch. But you know what I mean, he gets away with it. So I can see why Cormier's been fuming. So he's gone on Twitter and said, yeah, USADA, don't call me because I ain't answering the phone. You've got no credibility in my mind. And then Jon Jones comes out and says, yeah, keep using the illusion that I cheated to help you come to terms with the fact that you lost to me, but I was innocent, blah, blah, blah. And then Cormier went back and put some stuff on his Instagram. I'm like, geez, Cormier, pure fire if you see what he put on his Instagram. And it just feels like today it's been Cormier versus USADA and Jon Jones. Now, looking at all three parties, I see it like this. I could wax lyrical for ages about Jon Jones and the way that he's handled his affairs. We have all talked about the way Jon Jones has conducted himself. He could be one of the greats. He could be one of the all-time greats in terms of what he does in the ring and maybe be an example to others outside of the octagon. However, he hasn't managed his affairs very, very well, and it just feels like every 6 months there's a Jon Jones controversy. And looking at all those controversies, then looking at DC, then looking at how DC will see this, and then looking at how USADA are involved, I think out of all three parties, USADA, along with the UFC, really, the integrity, they've compromised their integrity with the way that they've handled this. Anyone else would get a 4-year suspension, or a 2-year suspension, or a 4, I can't remember, is it 2 and then 4? Someone tell me in the comments down below. Anyone else would get more. Jon gets less. And I don't blame Cormier for feeling the way that he does. I don't blame him. But to me, this highlights another problem, and this is just how I see it. In sports and entertainment, we have a social stratification ladder. We have a Indian caste system. We have a social class system. The lower you are in terms of name value is where you'll be. The higher you get, the higher you get, the higher you get. You move up, up and up. When you're at the top, much like in sociology when they say this to us, you have access to all the resources in the world. You know, disposable income, the best of everything. It's all there, open and available to you. And that also means that certain institutions will make concessions for you. We've seen this in our workplaces, we've seen this in our schools, we are seeing this in our sports. And it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I'm not naive to this. Jon Jones failed an out-of-competition test for cocaine right in 2015. We can also talk about the hit-and-run thing as well, but I'm really talking about the USADA and the drug testing here. You had the cocaine thing, you had the hit-and-run thing, which was happened not long after that. So you had the cocaine, then you had the fact that he was supposed to fight in 2016 at UFC 200, ruined a main event because he failed a test again, comes back the following year, beats Cormier, fails a test 2 weeks later, which must have been especially hard on Cormier because we all remember the emotions laid bare for all to see. He was made fun of by certain people. Frank Mir, I think, was one of them, right? Made fun of him for crying or something, or said something about him crying. It was a very emotional moment, and he had to accept that someone that he really dislikes is the better man, to then find out 2 weeks later he failed a drug test. Again, to have Turinabol in his system. So Cormier sees that and thinks, with all this man's history of screw-ups, why is he tested once this year and I'm tested 11 times. You test the guy that screwed up so many times. You test him frequently. Brendan Schaub pointed it out, and I was like, yeah, Jon will be back. And when he got his license revoked, and after I'd done that video, I should have just said, you know what, he'll be back in 4 months. Don't worry, he will be back, because that kind of made me think, no. And I'll tell you what, wherever he's fighting, if he's fighting back in Las Vegas, mate, he'll be back. Charlie, there you go. But that's the thing. He was brought back. And if anything, it makes USADA look really, really bad. And it highlights what I've touched on, the Indian caste system, the social stratification ladder, the social class system. Jon Jones fails so many tests. There's clearly something up there. Clearly. But the higher you are on that social class Indian caste system, the more and more access you have to certain resources. The finest doctors, solicitors, marketers, agents, PR teams, the people you work for are going to make concessions for you, or people that gain to benefit from you are going to make concessions for you. And that is why Jon is back. And how do we know this? Because on the same side of the coin, you have Tom Lawler, who failed a test. Tom Lawler was not afforded a big media circus to declare his innocence. There was no Malki Karwar. There was no interview on the Rogan podcast, because he's low on the totem pole. Jon's high up. They stand to benefit from having Jon come back soon, because it's been a rough year in terms of pay-per-view. And Jon's back. And I think it just makes the UFC look really, really bad. But I think USADA in particular look really, really sketchy in my opinion. And it doesn't surprise me why some fighters just end up going, you know what, I'm about done with this MMA thing and I want to retire, because look at what USADA are doing. Like, look at what they're doing. And, if things escalate with Jon in the future, and I really hope they don't, I really hope he's learned his lesson and this nonsense doesn't happen again, but it feels like every 6 months these things happen. I hope that things don't escalate to a certain level where something more serious than what we've had in the last 4 to 5 years happens. I really hope it doesn't get there. And if it does happen, I don't feel like the UFC and the USADA and all these commissions and all these professionals and governing bodies are in a position to say, well, how did that happen? Well, you think that when you had the time to discipline him, you could have done it, and maybe you could have learned from it and grown from it. But I don't blame Cormier for not answering the call, but I'll tell you what, Cormier may face some kind of disciplinary now for basically not letting known his whereabouts and saying what he's saying. But rules are rules, but do I blame him in this sense? I really don't. And if you've seen some of the posts that he's been putting on his Instagram lately, dude is straight up on fire right now. Anyways, I'm out of here. I'm done. I hope you like that little analogy about the social class system. And let me know what you think about this whole Daniel Cormier versus USADA and Jon Jones ordeal. And hope to see you in a few days.